Hello everyone. This week we're going to have a look at 2.4.1. You can see on the board here, national income. We're going to look at a model. The model's here on the board. It's also in your PowerPoint. It's called the circular flow of income, and it's really interesting. It looks at the state of an economy and what's going on. It links nicely to our aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagram that we've been using over the last few weeks, and both of them show very similar things, and we're going to illustrate how the two link today. So let's talk through this diagram then. It looks tricky, but if you start taking it apart, you'll notice that it simply shows you how an economy works. So let's have a look. So what have we got in this simple model? Well, we've got households and firms. Households, you can assume here, we're looking at consumers, we're looking at you and I. Firms, well, this is the I of aggregate demand, this is the investment. These are the producers of all the goods and services that we buy. Well, how does this work? You can see the arrows going around here. Well, this shows the flow of money, the flow of income around the economy. Well, let's take households. Households will provide factors of production, this dashed line, to firms. What are factors of production? Land, labour, capital and enterprise. What do most households provide? Well, it's labour, isn't it, for the jobs that we have. So households provide labour. But do they do it for nothing? Do they do it for free? I'm teaching you here now, this is my factor of production. Do I get paid? Fortunately for me, yes I do. I get a factor income. So I provide my factor, so I provide my labour, and at the end of the month, the firm, in this case the school, will provide a factor income to me. Incomes are really important. We'll see why in a minute. As a result, what can households do? Well, households can spend that money because if I earn money, it doesn't all go into my bank. I've got to pay my bills, I've got to buy food, I've got to pay the mortgage, I've got to buy all the things that I need to buy and probably a few things that I don't need to buy. So I'm spending on goods and services. That money's going to firms, and what are they providing to me? Well, all the things that I purchase come back to me. So what we get is this money going from households into firms, firms back into households, households to firms, firms to households. And this money will keep moving. On starter one of today's lesson, you will see that I've asked you to find the oldest coin. If you find a really old coin that's still in circulation, just think, how many times has that coin been spent by somebody in an economy? How many times has that coin gone to the bank and come back out of the bank again? It flows round, so it's a flow concept that we're looking at here. Now, if we only had this, an economy would be in a strong position at all points. Money would simply be flowing round and round this circle, but it's not that simple, is it? If I was to receive £100, would I spend it all? That's the question. Well, the answer is probably not. I'm probably going to maybe save some, put some in a bank. I might spend some of it abroad, I might have a holiday. That would be money slipping out the economy. Think about net trade, imports and exports. So you'll see these arrows on the outside. Now this links to lesson 2 of today's theory. And this is called injections and withdrawals. Injections, you can see the 3 of them here, are when money enters the system, enters this circular flow and starts moving around. Withdrawals are reasons why it's taken out. So money leaves the system. So what are they? Well, money goes into the system in 3 ways. We've got investment. So this is investment spending by firms. They might be spending the money that they've saved, or they might be spending money that they've borrowed, but it's new money entering the system. So that would enter here. By the way, these arrows, they don't have to enter at a certain point. It's just for show. They can enter over here. It doesn't matter. What else have we got? G, government spending. Well, this has been a massive one. What's been going on in the economy over the last 12 months? Well, less money's been going around. Less jobs are available. What are the government trying to do? They're trying to keep the system going. They're trying to keep this money moving. And they've had to pump huge amounts in. The furlough scheme is the one that's always on the news. But there are lots of other schemes that are involving huge amounts of government spending. And the last one down here is exports. If you remember back to when we looked at net trade, exports are where goods and services are sent abroad, but what enters the UK? The income, the payment. and that enters the UK circular flow. So these extra money flowing in, they're called injections. If we had injections and nothing else, well, actually, we're going to have a problem, and we'll look at ADAS in a minute and see what that problem might be. But what we do have, you'll see here, is we have 3 different ways that money leaks out. It's called a leakage or a withdrawal. You'll see the 2 words, and they mean the same thing. What have we got? Well, S. What might S mean? If I gave you some money, what might you be tempted to do with it? Some of you, I know, would go and spend it all. But some of you wouldn't. You'd put some in your bank. You'd save it. If money is saved, that money's going nowhere. That money's left the system. If you've got an old 1p coin and you see it's 20 years old, you might think, well, that must have been around the system thousands of times. But how often do those 1p coins end up in a penny pot or a jar and not moved, not touched for 12 months or 5 years? That's savings. It's taken out. It's not spent. What else have we got? T. Well, think about it. When I earn my money, do I get all the money that I earn? No, afraid not. The government might give, but the government will also take. It's taxation. So the level of tax the government takes will affect the circular flow. That's why the government's got to be careful. They've got to use taxation to try and target the budget deficit, to try and reduce the amount of debt in the economy. However, if they tax too highly, is there an incentive to work? And also, we're reducing the amount of money going around the system. The government needs us spending money. If they take too much from workers won't have as much to spend, will affect firms, will affect employment. And the last one here is M, imports. So exports is money flowing in and goods and services going out. Here's the opposite. The money's leaving the system. The goods and services are coming in, but the money itself is leaving the system. And this is our economy. So money will flow round and round here, with some money entering in and some money leaving at any point in time. And what this does, and the government will try and target, is it will try and keep it in balance. So you can think of it a bit like a bath with money, well, water in case of a bath, at a certain level, and you'll want to keep it around about that level. So if too much is going out, then put a little bit more in. If not as much is leaking out, then maybe you can put less in. In future weeks, we're going to look at ADAS again and how this links, and think about things like consumer confidence. So if consumer confidence is high, are we going to save more or are we going to spend more? I would say if consumer confidence is high, probably save a bit less, spend a bit more money in the system, good for the economy. Let's have a look over here then. So I've been covering this with my back, but this is our standard diagram. So we've got our Keynes curve here, which we would recommend you use. We've got our aggregate demand, and I've got my YF, my max potential of the economy, and I've got my Y0 here, my current position, my current output, and PL0, my current price level. Well, let's take one of these. Let's take one of the trickier ones. Let's say that we have a big increase in exports for whatever reason. So we have a big increase in exports. Well, what does that do? Well, if you think about the money flowing around, there's more money in the system. Think about what we learned about aggregate demand. Increase in X means an increase in net trade. Remember, net trade is X minus M. If M hasn't changed, X has gone up. Net trade, X minus M has gone up, and therefore AD has gone up. So AD will increase to AD1, Y1, and we get this little increase in inflation here. So what have we got? We'll think to what we did last time when we did ADAS, an increase in exports, more money in the system, an increase in aggregate demand, increase in output from Y to Y1, a decrease in the negative output gap, unemployment, it's the same thing, negative output gap, unemployment, from Y0 to YF, to Y1 to YF. What have we suffered as a result? We've got a little bit of inflation. Now the target the UK government set the Bank of England is around about 2%. 2% plus or minus 1% is the target. So as long as it's within that range, that's fine. But you might ask the question, why? Well, why don't we just want, never-ending money going around this system? Why don't we want minimum withdrawals and maximum injections into the economy? Inflation's the answer. If too much money is pumping around the system, well, when we did the previous, you'll remember this bit here, the flat bit, we've got sticky wages here, and if you're in this bit, actually an increase in AD has almost no effect on inflation. That's okay. But if your economy is already up here and you get another, say, big increase in AD, well, look, you've got a little change in your output, but a really big change in your price level. And that will break that macroeconomic objective of low and stable inflation, as I say, around 2%. So these two can be used together. In the exam, you're more likely to use this diagram here, but of course you've got to be able to draw this diagram and you've got to be able to explain it. So just a summary of what we've got the money that flows round the circular flow here. We've got households who are providing their factor of production, often labour, in return for their payment. When they receive that payment, they will then buy things from firms and receive the goods and services. And along the way, we've got this money going in and out. We've got the injections through firms investing. We've got the government and all of the spending that they do. We've got exports and the money flowing in from abroad. And then we've got the money going out. We've got the savings, we've got the tax, and we've got the imports. The government will appreciate that they need to use taxation, and they will recommend that we do savings, because they want us to have savings and be able to, for example, have pensions and things. But they won't, nearly lost the pen, they won't want us to save too much. Because if we save too much, we're not spending in the economy. They want consumers confident and firms confident. And imports, yes, they will appreciate we've got to, or we will buy imports, but where possible, we will look to produce within the UK, which is sometimes why you hear of protectionist policies, where we're trying to limit the amount of purchasing from abroad. If you're happy and you understand this theory, next week we're going to move on to the multiplier. And the multiplier looks at how much that money flows around the system. So if you want to get ahead, have a look at the multiplier.